But nevertheless, we are here now, and we're very happy.
Dennis, have you
Yeah.
checked with Cable Tow if we're live or also?
I already talked to them.
Okay.
They're going live now. Okay, they're going live now. They're monitoring us and they're making sure. So hopefully,
That's
na
okay. I think we'll start relatively like before.
yes,
Let's
yes, yes.
just wait for everyone to come in.
Yeah, I think we already have
Oh,
114 actually. Oh my goodness, you're really a rock star, Dennis.
then may you should highlight our most worshipful Grandmaster as an important Christmas gift this
I,
Saturday.
I think that's what they're looking forward to. No, December 19. My goodness, this is the first time that the Grand Jurisdiction, first time that the Grand Jurisdiction in so many years of our existence, that the brethren will be receiving a Christmas gift from no less than the Grandmaster himself. Ah, kakaiba
A
talaga.
Christmas
Iba
gift that
talaga ang
will
Grandmaster.
take
Yes,
them
yes, yes. So,
the whole
okay.
vacation to use
I
up.
think, Kuya Teddy, we have enough members who are here already.
Can we just check
Yeah,
before we go to most worshipful June's message? Can we just check that we're live? So I'm sure the
I'll
brethren
check
are
with,
also in on Facebook are also waiting for his message. Good
yeah,
evening,
I
most
will
worshipful
check with
sir.
that person. Para sigurado tayo, ha?
May party ka ba dyan, Kuya Dennis? You froze. Kuya Dennis, you froze. For those on cable tow now, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning from wherever you are across our jurisdiction. Our host for this evening, very worshipful Dennis Conanes, is experiencing some technical difficulties, but as soon as he gets back on the air, we'll start again. Kuya
Wait,
Dennis,
wait,
okay
wait.
ka na?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. I just called, mali pala yun. Kapag tumawag pala ako, na problema rin yung signal ko. Anyway, Kuya Harold said we're online.
Yeah, we are. We are.
Yeah.
We,
So we're
I
good.
just,
We're
we're
good.
good.
Yeah. We have already like 129, 130. Oh my goodness. We have a lot of people, joining this webinar this evening. Okay. It's 7:20 already. Without much further ado, brethren, it is my distinct honor and privilege that, this evening, December, end of the year, but, to this person, no month is the end of anything. He is always there, committed to make sure that he will deliver not just a simple commitment, but he makes sure that it is an exemplary commitment. And whenever he does things, he doesn't do it only just because he wanted to do it, but he does it because he knows it needs to be done. And that's why we're still here for him, because we believe in his passion and his commitment for our fraternity, and the jurisdiction is in a much better hand because of his leadership. And tonight, he has a message for us, which we all know you are waiting for every month. And this will be a very nice opportunity for him to also express his greetings for the year that have come in. And we all know that he never gets tired. That's what we can say. He's always on the go, and he always move things. So okay, without much further ado, brethren, the most worshipful Grandmaster of the Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of the Philippines, most worshipful Agapito S. Suwan Jr.
Thank you very much. Very worshipful, Dennis. Very worshipful, Teddy Kalau, our senior grand lecturer. Very worshipful, Oliver Yabot, our assistant grand secretary. Very worshipful, Dennis Konanan, our chief of staff. Very worshipful sirs, brethren, good evening. Once again, let me greet one and all a safe and healthy day. We are halfway in the month, and soon we are going to start a new year. We just do hope that it would be a better year than 2020, which has brought unto us great difficult challenges. But as tough as this year is, we managed to cross those rough and rugged roads, and we are still here, able and functioning, and we really thank our great architect of the universe. The Grand Lodge of the Philippines is perhaps one of the few Grand Lodges in the world which managed to stay connected and operational despite the pandemic. Our lodges are all in order. Stated meetings are being held since last month on an if able basis with strict compliance to all health protocols. Our Masonic charity works continue without let up. Just last week, our relief caravan reached many flood-hit areas in Isabela and Cagayan and distributed relief goods to scores of victims. A few days ago, we again conducted bloodletting drive in the Grand Lodge, and donations are still coming in from Masons here and abroad. And so I thank the brethren for their tireless efforts to help bring Masonic relief to those devastated by the numerous tragedies that befall our country. You will note that in the midst of the coronavirus and nature's fury, we have managed to observe all mandated ceremonials in the jurisdiction, like the Independence Day, birthdays of our Mason heroes, Lodge remembrance, and a number of other events, thanks to modern online communications technology, which has proven very valuable and indispensable to our needs. For the remainder of the year, I invite you to attend through online connection two important events in Masonry. The first will be on December 19th, the 108th Grand Lodge anniversary. We shall hold the ceremony in the Grand Lodge in a low-key manner, attended by a few Grand Lodge officers, which shall be available by remote viewing to all within the jurisdiction. We shall pay tribute to our past Grand Masters and honor them for their valuable contribution to the success of our Grand Lodge. We shall also recognize some Masons in the government service for their exemplary performance as Masons and public servants. And we shall likewise pay homage to our recent Mason heroes, our own frontline doctors who died performing their duty to save others from the deadly virus. The other event is the Rizal Day celebration on December 30th. This is also an event that we religiously hold without fail every year. We plan to hold this affair in the Grand Lodge also in a solemn and subdued manner, and I direct all Rizal lodges to likewise take the lead in the observance of this day in their respective communities. Brethren, I say again that hope springs eternal in the human breast, and we, brothers of the mystic tie, should remain optimistic that the present tragedies that we face will soon pass. Already, The whole world is expecting the availability of the coronavirus vaccine anytime next year. And hopefully, we shall see the end of this pandemic. And so, let us remain hopeful and let us invoke the blessings of the great architect of the universe to keep us safe and healthy while we do our Masonic labors. In the meantime, our Masonic education continues. And so let us all listen to our very able Senior Grand Lecturer, very worshipful Teddy Calao, as he once again imparts to us some very valuable knowledge in Masonry. Thank you, and may I also wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a joyful New Year. Good evening, brethren.
Thank you very much, most worshipful Grand Master. Your message is really inspiring for all of us in this season. Rest assured that the brethren will be looking forward to waiting for December 19, our Grand Lodge anniversary. And I suppose that is something big, not only for the brethren, but for the whole jurisdiction as well. And it will revive our fire, for the craft. So thank you very much, most worshipful sir. You really are an inspiration to all of us. Okay. So, you know what? Our lecturer this evening called my attention. I made a blooper, a very bad blunder in putting up the old topic when we have a new topic. So I'm very sorry, very worshipful SGL sir. It was my mistake. I think I was too engrossed with so much things that I'm working on that I forgot to look into your updated message to me. But don't forget, you're always close to my heart. Okay, so without much further ado, our senior grand lecturer, Very Worshipful Teodoro Calao IV, who will be giving our lecture and discussion for this evening about Masonic landmarks, understanding the fundamental elements of Masonic traditional law. Go ahead, Very Worshipful sir.
Thank you, most worshipful Suhan, and very worshipful Dennis. If you're wondering, before everything, I'd like to greet everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are in the world today as you join us from across the regular and Masonic world, and to all of those who are curious about our craft. Thank you for attending this next series of our Masonic education online for this extended term. As Kuya Dennis has highlighted earlier, there was actually another topic as we launched this second round of the series. And since we took up the Constitution, the written law, last July, we launched the second round now with our traditional law. But actually, we were supposed to do edicts, but we realized with the concerns raised by some that because there are many topics in those edicts that are best left privately for discussion of the brethren, we should have something that is that can be understood readily by the public. And that's why we ended up with a topic that many brethren actually don't really focus on. And if they do, they focus on one or two of what we call these as Masonic landmarks. So, hello? Just a minute, brethren. Let me just check. Uh, what happened here? Kuya Dennis, can you see the screen?
Yes, Kuya Teddy, screen is okay.
Okay. Let me just. Okay.
Tete, di screen is ko.
I'm sorry for that. There was a technical glitch on my second camera. Okay, but first of all, let me highlight this new topic that launches our.
Nakalabas sa picture mo yung upuan, ano yung upuan mo at saka yung flooring mo. Yan, okay.
Okay
Now we
now?
can, yeah. Good. Okay.
Okay now? Okay.
Yes, okay.
Uh, let me highlight, brethren, that the topic we have today is more. It's something that can be more readily understood by the public, and something also that very few Masons actually focus on during sometimes their entire Masonic careers, no? And that is what we call Masonic landmarks, which are those specific concepts which characterize the craft, which have been with us since time immemorial. Usually, when fellow brethren talk about this, they only talk about one or two, but not exactly all of the landmarks that have been proposed by different Masonic authorities. So today, since this is not part of our regular Masonic education, even in the lodges, for those brethren who have not yet seen the entire picture, we will give them the forest versus the trees. Okay? So what will we take up today? First, we're going to look at the importance of the foundation behind everything that constitutes Masonic governance. Masonic governance is that system by which we govern ourselves in the Grand Lodge and the Lodge so that we can work Masonically, right? For those of us in the fraternity, a lot of us wonder why our leaders have so much discretion. While there are safeguards that often have never been used in place in our written law, many of us wonder why, given this so much discretion, why this is so when compared to other institutions like the secular government or other corporations. Leaders there don't have as much discretion. Well, that's because our entire governance system is founded on landmarks that highlight trust. So before we actually go into the landmarks, which form part of our traditional law, and the traditional law is the basis for our written law in the form of our Masonic law book, we have to go really to what is the foundation for all of this structure, and that is the Masonic concept of trust. When we understand that, then it's very easy for us to go into the hierarchy and different classes of Masonic legislation, the different kinds. What we saw and what you can see via replay on Facebook is in our July webinar, we talked about our modern or written law, our constitution, our ordinances, our lodge bylaws. All of that is in our Masonic law book. But in addition to that, we have a very rich system that also includes traditional, or what some would call unwritten law, and opinions and interpretations, which together constitute our Masonic legislation. So starting with the root or very foundation of that system, which is trust, we'll go into the hierarchy. So we can fit, after that, we know where Masonic landmarks fit in terms of our system of legislation and governance. So our second major topic is the concept, functions, and role of Masonic landmarks today. And for many brethren, this will be the first time, because usually when it comes to Masonic law, you focus on what's in our Masonic law book, while the landmarks are there at the very end. There are some brethren who mistakenly believe that all of these landmarks are persuasive. They are not. The landmarks, at least that we have adopted here, because different jurisdictions have adopted different landmarks, the 25 that we have adopted here are authoritative, and I will show you why they are authoritative in our jurisdiction. Okay? So then we're going to look. We're going to look at the concept of Masonic landmarks in other jurisdictions. The 51 jurisdictions of the United States. What have they adopted? Because this will hopefully give you some idea that what happens with landmarks is because they are unwritten law, there are many proposals as to what constitute landmarks. So many jurisdictions have different landmarks, and we'll not just see the traditional notions of what landmarks are, but the two most important modern versions of these concepts today. And then after that, I think I will actually go to the most important part of this lecture, which is to highlight that landmarks are relevant and important even today. We don't emphasize them as much, and maybe that's a fault of our grand lecturers. We don't emphasize them as much in our Masonic education, but if you have a complete understanding of at least the 25 that we've adopted in the Philippines, it will allow you in turn to better comprehend why our Masonic philosophy is the way it is. Okay? And therefore, if you understand that the landmarks are the roots that define that philosophy, okay, you will be able to grasp and go deeper when you go into the different, and it is, as you know, a very deep philosophy, into the different realms of what constitute uh, craft Freemasonry. Okay? One caveat again, brethren, and for those of you who are non-Masons, you will not be an expert on Masonic jurisprudence after this session. Okay? Further and deeper studies are required. You might want to take the online course on Masonic jurisprudence where landmarks are included in our diploma program in the IMES. That's part of their online course. And hopefully, when we go back to on-site courses next year, you can take that on-site with our IMES faculty. Okay? In particular, with that caveat, I also want to do a shout out to my fellow grand lecturers, our fellow junior and district grand lecturers. We have an extended syllabus for this term. You might want to integrate some of the concepts here because, frankly, landmarks don't get as much attention that they should, that they deserve to get in our jurisdiction. Because if you understand the landmarks, you understand the roots that define our philosophy. Okay, so first, let's now go to what we're going to take up broadly. 4 topics this evening, everyone. First, what is the foundation of Masonic jurisprudence? What's the foundation for that? We'll go into the concept of trust and how that affects everything. Trust is is implicit in our landmarks, as you will see later. When we understand the foundation and the structure of our Masonic governance, not just the Masonic law book, which we studied last time in July, but our whole system of Masonic legislation. When we can understand that, then we will talk about our second topic, which is Masonic landmarks and how they fit into this system. So now we're not just going to talk about just one or two. What are Masons on site? What are the Grand Master's prerogatives? What are the two inalienable rights from time immemorial of all brethren? We're not just going to focus on one or two. Hopefully, what we're going to do now is we're going to show you all of them so that you can see where they all fit in. Right? So that's the second topic. And then, an important caveat. Brethren, landmarks are unwritten because they have developed since time immemorial. Since if you were present during our course in Masonic history and philosophy in September and August, you can watch the replays in the cable tow page. You will see that they have defined the craft, but they are not something that traditionally has been put in writing. Sort of like the English Constitution, the Constitution of the United Kingdom. A lot of it is unwritten, is based on tradition. That to me is a better term for what landmarks are. They are part of our traditional law. And because they are part of our traditional law, there are many authorities. The one you recognize here is Very Worshipful Albert Mackey, who propose what these landmarks are. And because of that, many regular jurisdictions have different versions of these landmarks. We will talk about those different versions in our third topic. And I will give you the two modern versions of what landmarks are today. Okay, so that's our third topic. And finally, this is really the takeaway for today's topic. If you know the landmarks, you will see how you can apply them in Masonic philosophy to better understand every concept, because all concepts go from these roots. They are derived from these roots. First, you have the Masonic concept of trust. Then you build landmarks on top of that. And that constitutes our Masonic system of governance. If you want to know, this picture here is it's an example of what we mean physically by landmarks. It's supposed to show you the way, and that's why we call them landmarks. They are defining features of our philosophy that is supposed to show you the way. I understand that Kuya Dennis is watching. Kuya Dennis, if you want to know, yes, I really do race half marathons and marathons. Whether I run them or not is immaterial. But, the point of this picture is that landmarks like this, show you the way to where you want to go. And in this case, we're talking about Masonic philosophy. Okay. So now let's go to the very start, the very heart of our system of Masonic legislation, which is what constitutes the foundation of Masonic governance. And from there, okay, how do you classify all of our laws, regulations, and interpretations? Okay, these three pictures are important. They are Most Worshipful June, the brethren, our brethren in Melbourne, who created the lodge there of that practices a ritual, and a shout out to the brethren of Mabini Calao, 195, as they celebrate in 1 month's time the beginning of a year of their diamond year as a lodge. Okay, we're gonna see them again in our next as we go forward. First of all, if, brethren, you ask me, what is, if you were to highlight the most important concept of Masonic governance, okay, in terms of how we govern ourselves, whether as a lodge or Grand Lodge, what would it be, if you ask me? Surprisingly, many brethren will focus on the fact that the Grand Lodge, as the authority for its subordinate lodges, or some brethren will focus on the fact that a lodge is governed by masters and two wardens. Yes, that's also a landmark. But really, brethren, when you go to the roots of our comprehensive system of Masonic legislation that just not just involve our Masonic law book, but also our traditional law as written upon by Masonic authorities, okay, if there is one concept that is most important, it is that concept of Masonic trust as symbolized by the all-seeing eye that you see in this slide. This is the all-seeing eye, and secularly it has been adopted. What you see this on the dollar bill, this is a token from the Katipunan, where you also are Katipunan, KKK, where you see that all-seeing eye. That all-seeing eye highlight God always watching. And the symbol of that is symbolic also of the concept of Masonic trust. Because if you look at our regulations, brethren, Kuya Dennis, can you check if everyone's seeing their slides, please? Okay. If you look at our regulations, you will see that so much discretion is awarded to our uh, those who lead us. Okay, this is a direct quotation from our constitution. And if you note that in between communications, the Grand Master has nearly total authority over the craft. Not one board, not the Board of General Purposes, not a communication in between of communications. He has all of his executive powers. He has with the exception of the granting of charters. He has all of its judicial powers, and he has all legislative powers to the extent that they are harmonious with the Constitution. Okay? And our Masonic governance. You look at Worshipful Master and you that within the lodge, okay, within the lodge, the Worshipful Master has similar, virtually unlimited power. Where the Constitution does not require a vote of the brethren, he alone can decide. And that leads you to ask, why? Why is it that we give so much power to those who lead us? If you were in secular government, if you were in the Philippine government, this would be dangerous because you want to make sure that you'd have to put in all of the system of check and balances to guard against the fact that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yet in Freemasonry, that's what we always give. And here's the thing, Masonic humility, okay? We give a brother who becomes Worshipful Master or a brother who becomes Grand Master all of this power, and they lose it after their term of office. It's a very humble feeling, okay, when you leave power, if you are focused in the way non-Masons focus on leadership roles, which is don't give too much power because absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. But here's the thing, brethren. We do it that way. We give so much power to our leaders because they are supposed to govern with that all-seeing eye ever present. Even though no one else is looking, the God of your faith is witnessing your activities. And that is the concept of Masonic trust. All norms of Masonic governance are founded on the core premise that a brother fulfilling any leadership role does so in trust for his fellow brethren, as witnessed by the deity of his own faith. And that is why the all-seeing eye is important. Because even though, as you know, all Masons must believe in one God. You may have a different faith, but all of us believe in one God. Even though no one is looking, your God is watching. And therefore, the discretion you exercise in any leadership role, whether you are a master of the lodge or a grand master, okay, must be pursuant to this reality. And it is reminded to you in the charges that are read to you when you are installed in your office. That is the real reason why the all-seeing eye is there. And that is why when we give so much power to our worshipful master or grand master, whoever holds that role for a designated term, we highlight that it's really not the power that we concentrate on. It's not the discretion we provide that is important here. It is the stewardship that is given to one, the charge that is given to a brother, which is supposed to make him a better man, that we really focus on. In fulfilling that charge, in complying with the trust given to you by your brethren, okay, you learn to also be a better man. And that is why, as you will see later in our landmarks, all of our Masonic leadership roles focus on this. Okay? Before I move forward, if for those of you are wondering, let me just go back. Let our the slides catch up. For those of you who don't know this, that is the George Washington National Masonic Memorial in Virginia, the United States. And that is another example of what we highlight as the trust given to our leaders when they fill leadership roles. When you enter that grand memorial, and if you're ever in the US, this is just outside the District of Columbia. I hope you take time to visit this. You'll see there a hall of Masonic heroes that feature not just George Washington, but different Masonic leaders through the years. And they are memorialized there because they highlight that the leadership role, when it is given to a brother, is actually uh, not not really the providing of power, but the provision of a trust to keep, a charge that leader must hold. And if you do that properly, you are memorialized by your brethren, just like the George Washington Memorial, National Memorial is. Okay, so that is the core. That is the very cornerstone of the foundations of our governance, and you'll see that in our governance norms. Okay, so who is the ultimate Masonic authority here? You will be surprised. Again, many brethren don't realize this. They say Grand Lodge. The Grand Lodge is the ultimate Masonic authority in our Masonic jurisdiction. I'm sorry, brethren, but that is a mistaken impression. If you follow our landmarks, specifically as you will see later, landmarks 4 and 5, okay, the ultimate Masonic authority in our grand jurisdiction in between communications, okay, is our Grand Master. Again, because he is given the charge to take care of the craft when the brethren are not gathered. Okay? And the brethren do so because they place their personal trust in him. That is why not all grandmasters are perfect when that charge is, you know, not truly fulfilled. You can see that some brethren react very violently. That's because that if you enter that office, you should know that it is a charge where all the brethren, all the 24,000 Freemasons in this jurisdiction, say we trust you enough to hold that office. Okay. Now, that concept of trust is also present, not just in our ultimate Masonic authority, but also in the way we govern. The Grand Lodge governs lodges. Okay, vertical governance relationships from the Grand Lodge to the Lodge, and how lodges govern themselves as to each other, or horizontal governance relationships. Okay, vertically, okay, we do not say, while we say that lodges are subordinate to the Grand Lodge, when we talk of Masonic governance, we're really talking about individual Masons. If you look at our 17th landmark, okay, the Grand Master more specifically governs all Masons resident in the Masonic jurisdiction. All Masons, okay? Even though they are not members in a lodge of that Masonic jurisdiction. Okay? That is the Mackay 17th. Okay? And that highlights, again, the personal trust of all brethren in the Grand Master. That is why we call our Grand Master most worshipful. He is most entitled to respect because all of us, not just brethren in one lodge, but all of us uniformly respect him. Take note, okay, that the 17th landmark, as you will see later, highlights that this is for all brethren within the Masonic jurisdiction. That's important because that landmark, as you will see later, is the basis for the doctrine of exclusive territorial jurisdiction. Within one Masonic jurisdiction, there can only be one Grand Master. Okay, because of Mackay 17th, the 17th landmark that we've adopted. We'll go into that more later. Okay, So that's vertical. Grand Lodge, Grand Master, Lodges, Brethren. Okay? Whether you, even if you are not, if you are not a member of any lodge, if you are visiting here, like this picture of us visiting our Melbourne brethren, we were all visitors there under the Grand Master for Victoria. Okay, in a grand jurisdiction, if you're, even if you're just visiting, okay, you are subordinate to the Grand Master of that regular Masonic jurisdiction. Okay, so that highlights that there's one Grand Master for one Masonic jurisdiction. What about lodges? How about lodges as to each other? Take note, brethren, that the one who elects a master are the brethren of the lodge. And when the charges are given to that worshipful master when he is installed, okay, those charges are given not to all brethren, like the Grand Master, but to the brethren, on behalf of the brethren in his lodge. That is why the relationship of a master is not one of him being the deputy of the Grand Master. He's not. He is the supreme Masonic authority within his lodge. And if all of you are supreme Masonic authorities within your lodge, I'm talking of all the worshipful masters, that means that lodges are sovereign as to each other. That is Mackay's, and we'll see, landmarks 10 and 16. We'll get into that later. That's important because you'll see, you'll better understand why our Masonic law book is this way. For example, I'll just give one rule. Objections. There is a petitioner who petitions in a lodge. If a brother in that lodge objects and tells it to the master, okay, that is the equivalent of rejection before balloting. But if a brother from another lodge objects, and that is communicated either to the worshipful master or the investigating community, that is not equivalent to objection because the lodge is sovereign within. Okay, a brother from another lodge cannot dictate that a petitioner be rejected. Why? Because he is not the supreme Masonic authority within that lodge. The master is, and the master will consider that, and he can opt to make it his own, in which case that objection will count as to disqualify the petitioner, or he can bring it up to the brethren without necessarily mentioning the brother who did the objection from another lodge, so that it can be discussed. So, in every lodge, okay, the brethren put their personal trust in the master. And from time to time, we see worshipful master who don't get this concept. They think that it's just like any regular civic club or other office where they can do what they want. They can't. Okay? You may be given all of that discretion, but that discretion is actually a charge to keep. So you have to do it in the context of being a steward of the lodge for your brethren. That is Mackay's 10th and 16th landmarks, which we have adopted in this jurisdiction. And many of our rules, like the objections of brethren that I highlighted earlier, arise from that fact. Lodges are sovereign as to each other. So within a lodge, an objection disqualifies a petitioner, but outside, if it comes from another brother, it is discretionary because lodges cannot dictate who another lodge, for example, applies, who gets balloted or not. Okay. So this concept is important because this highlights why we have this unique system of governance where we trust our leaders so much. There are, of course, safeguards. There are systems of Masonic trials for different classes of brethren. They're not supposed to be used regularly. They are supposed to be the exception. when that trust is violated. Okay? But if you keep that trust, that is supposed, because it is a Masonic philosophy, it is a philosophy to make you a better man. The point of being in that office is for you to keep that charge. Okay? So with that in mind, that allows us, therefore, to have a better understanding. If this is an example of how our landmarks form the foundation for all of our legislation and regulations, we can better understand why they're constructed that way. Let's go to them. Let's go to a modern taxonomy of what we constitute as Masonic legislation today. Okay? First, we have the old name for this was unwritten law, but now, more and more, to be more specific, it's now called traditional law. First, we have Masonic traditional law, which is basically, is the highest if you want to look it from top down, or the foundation if you want to go ground up. Okay, it is authoritative for all Masonic jurisdictions as to all landmarks. Okay, but please note, different, as we will see later in our third topic in this section, different Masonic jurisdictions adopt different landmarks. That's because they rely on different authorities. The authority that we rely here, you will see the book here, is very worshipful Albert Gallatin Mackey of South Carolina, former Grand Lecturer, past Grand Lecturer in the jurisdiction, one of the most eminent Masonic jurists. Okay, and this is one of his books, The Principles of Masonic Law. In his book, Jurisprudence of Freemasonry, he provides, this is the 1982 edition as updated, he provides the landmarks which we have adopted in this jurisdiction. So they are authoritative for all Masonic jurisdictions as to all land with regards to the landmarks if they are adopted. However, we also have other traditional laws. And if you go to the very end of our Masonic law book, you'll see there what we call as 10 ancient laws that have been passed to us from the times when we were developing as a craft. An example of this is the York Constitution of 926, the Constitution of Edward III, the charges, the ancient charges, regulation of 1720, and so forth. These quote-unquote ancient laws, they are persuasive for all Masonic jurisdictions. Okay? Persuasive in the sense that you take them into account when you are designing modern Grand Lodge legislation, which is our full written law. That's Class B. Okay? In our jurisdiction, the Masonic Law Book, which contains our constitution, ordinances, lodge bylaws, liturgy. Okay? We have an edict that says what is our official cipher. Okay? The monitor of our rituals. Okay? It's all bound here. This is authoritative within our jurisdiction. Okay? The very end of this is record of Masonic law. Okay? Then, of course, how do you build on this? From time to time, there are different ways to amend or to create new law. We talked about that in July. A master can issue an edict, and this is which is effective immediately because it is the part of his legislative powers, subject to confirmation by brethren at the next annual communication. The Committee on Legislation can propose legislation, but this during ANCOM. Brethren can on their own propose legislation that is sent to the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Legislation, even if that committee rejects, okay, because the report contains that rejection, the brethren can again take it up on the floor of the next annual communication. So you see here, that's our Masonic law book. In there, we have the edicts that, for example, say this is our official cipher, our official manual of rituals. Okay, and from time to time, that is amended with new edicts and new proposals from the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Legislation, and the brethren want to propose new legislation taken up during ANCOM. This last portion that you see here is an example of a Grand Lodge circular. Okay? That is the third class in our structure of governance of Grand Lodge of legislation. These are Grand Lodge regulations and interpretations. Okay? In general, they are authoritative during the Masonic term because they are primarily administrative in nature. What are examples of this? Again, you'll see here. You'll see here. Let me just there. You'll see here that the biggest number of these issuances are Grand Master circulars. The difference between an edict and a circular is that an edict is meant to be permanent, and as if confirmed, will subsequently be authoritative for subsequent Masonic terms. A circular, however, this one here that I'm pointing to here, a circular is primarily an administrative instrument meant to regulate a specific matter during the Masonic terms, except if that circular says otherwise. Okay? So, if that exception is confirmed by the brethren, then it becomes binding. That very rarely happens, everyone, because as much as possible, if it's meant to be for to last subsequent terms, remember that Grand Masters, they exercise their discretion in trust for the brethren. They also know that subsequent Grand Masters are exercising that trust. So pursuant to that trust, they're very careful not to violate it. Okay? So that's one form. Another form is opinions of the Grand Lodge Committee on Jurisprudence. If it's a very sensitive issue of interpretation where there are different the provision is vague, or for example the law has been overtaken by new realities, so much so that a grand lecturer cannot say that the law is clear and not vague. Okay, if you want to settle that authoritatively, you don't resort to your core of grand lecturers. You make a formal query addressed to the Committee on Jurisprudence. And the Committee on Jurisprudence, they have that, they have precedents that they rely upon. They will make an authoritative interpretation in the form of an opinion. If the Grand Master accepts that opinion and it is confirmed by the brethren, then it becomes authoritative for subsequent Masonic terms. So those are all of our Grand Lodge regulations and interpretations. Okay. Then, of course, you have your Lodge regulations. And these are also impacted by Class B, our Masonic law book, in terms of the Uniform Lodge bylaws, which are norms from time immemorial of lodges govern themselves. These are all the issuance of an incumbent master during his Masonic term. And it need not be in the form of a circular, like a Grand Master circular. It can be, for example, a strategic plan that he issues to the brethren. That is in itself a rule or norm that governs and is authoritative during that worshipful master's term. Please note, though, that after he relinquishes the office, okay, its binding effect is only persuasive on the next worshipful master, because the next worshipful master derives his authority not from his predecessor but from the brethren. So he should exercise it again in trust for the brethren. Okay, so lodge regulations, whether this be in the form of circulars or strategic plans or any sort of issuance by the worshipful master, they are authoritative for as long as that worshipful master is in office, and in subsequent for subsequent terms, they are persuasive. Can the worshipful master incumbent strive to make them authoritative? Yes, he can do so by recommending to the brethren that they be adopted as an additional lodge bylaw. Okay, so that future worshipful masters must, okay, follow that rule. Where would that where would what would occasions be like for that? For example, disposition of specific funds. If a brother donates something to the lodge, like 1 million pesos, and he has instructions, okay, which the worshipful master says, I will respect. So that pronouncement is authoritative for his term. But of course, the worshipful master wants to make sure that the donor's wishes are also respected. So the way to make that authoritative is to make the lodge, make it an additional bylaw to your uniform bylaws, stating that in subsequent terms, this amount that has been donated, okay, will be used for this purpose as highlighted by the donor. So then it becomes part of, effectively, Grand Lodge legislation, because in addition to your uniform bylaws, you're adopting an additional bylaw that is meant to be authoritative for subsequent uh, uh, generations or successors of the worshipful master within that lodge by using the uniform code of bylaws that you're adding to. As long as it's not contradictory to the uniform bylaws, yes, you can add to your bylaws. Okay? And finally, from time to time, it may be necessary for you to get an interpretation from a grand lecturer. And I'm not just highlighting myself here. Usually, this is your junior grand lecturer, or in the lodge, your district grand lecturer. Okay? They have important function when it comes to legislation. And that is to provide answers to queries put by the brethren. And those answers have three roles. One, you're in the middle of ritual, you're rehearsing. And there's something in the ritual, for example, that you're confused about. The grand lecturer is supposed to provide you with an interpretation so that you can proceed. Okay? When you're trying to interpret a provision of our Masonic law book that relates to lodge governance, not grand lodge governance, but lodge governance. Grand lecturers have no jurisdiction over rules of the Grand Lodge, but they are teaching authorities as to lodge governance. Okay, like for example, when can you file a motion for reconsideration of someone who has been rejected, a petitioner who has been rejected of a ballot? You ask your friendly neighborhood DGL. Okay, if you follow that instruction, even though it's wrong, if you follow it, okay, that is a valid defense against any charge of unmasonic conduct. Okay, so if you follow that interpretation, because you relied on your grand lecturer, DGL, junior grand lecturer, or SGL, even if it's wrong, it is a valid defense against a charge of unmasonic conduct. Okay? Now, what happens nga if it's wrong? What if you failed to follow, for example, the edict on getting a substitute Grand Lodge Inspector Pro Hac Vice during conferrals, and your district grand lecturer interpreted it wrongly? Okay, that DGL is answerable to the SGL, but you yourself will not be penalized because you relied on the opinion of the DGL. Okay, from time to time also, as part of their instructional authority, when it comes to matters of applying Masonic philosophy, yes, you can ask your DGL, JGL, or SGL to help you out in those. So that's the point. Is it authoritative, the interpretation of a grand lecture? No, it's not. Okay, so if as a result of your following that interpretation, the act after all is void, then it really is void. But you have a defense against a brother charging you with unmasonic conduct because you followed a DGL in good faith. Okay? You might wonder, where did I get this? I am not trying to hype our core of grand lecturers here. From time immemorial, that has always been the role of the office of a grand lecturer. For those of you who want to go into this detail, we already explored this topic last September. Let me just highlight, if you want to know what kind of source this practice from time immemorial of the role of grand lecturers here. If you don't have time to go back to that, let me just quote again very worshipful Albert Mackey. The office of grand lecturer is the recognized teacher for the Masonic system. Okay, is the recognized teacher for the Masonic system here in every jurisdiction. Okay, so from time immemorial, that is the essential role of grand lecturers. Okay, so with that, now we understand that these 5 areas constitute our entire system of Masonic legislation, springing from our traditional law, which is the landmarks as adopted in a jurisdiction, if they are adopted, and then our other ancient customs. Here, we recognize 10 of those ancient customs. They're at the back of your Masonic law book. Okay? And then we have the Grand Lodge legislation, which is our Masonic law book, Constitution, Ordinance, Uniform Bylaws, okay? And amendments from time to time, as highlighted, most commonly by new edicts. Okay, they're authoritative. They're meant to be authoritative going forward. Grand Lodge regulations and interpretations. Administrative issuance, authoritative during the term. Opinions, if they are adopted, they are authoritative after as well. Lodge regulations, in addition to the uniform bylaws, that are authoritative for that particular term. And your Grand Lodge interpretations by Grand Lecturers, which are persuasive in the specific context of that query presented. Okay? So for our Grand Lecturers here, I tackled this during our orientation 2 Marches ago before we were installed. Some of you did ask during that orientation. One of you did ask, what happens? What happens if it comes out that the facts given to us are wrong? Okay? As I highlighted, your interpretation is persuasive given the context of the query. If the facts given to you are wrong, then obviously, okay, that will not be a defense against a charge of unmasonic conduct because you were given the wrong facts or incomplete facts. Okay, so it's important that you find out what the facts are if you're going to uh, uh, be doing this function of our ancient office. Okay, so with that, Kuya Dennis, it's time for our first poll as we now go to our uh, second topic, which is Masonic landmarks. So here, let me ask everyone, how many Masonic landmarks are there? Okay. Is it A, 7, B, 25, C, 3, or D, any of the above na lang kasi hindi ko alam. Okay, let's see. Brethren, let's see. Kuya Dennis, can you put our poll? Have we shared? Kuya Dennis, have we very worshipful Dennis, have we shared the poll already? While you're answering the poll, let me just highlight the screen here. This is the kind of gadgets worshipful masters you want to put on their desks. Okay, so let me just highlight, if you're gonna follow this picture, there's one thing there that's prohibited in our jurisdiction, and that is the fridge that is in front of you. You cannot bring alcoholic drinks inside the Masonic temple. Okay, so please, brethren, this if you think that this is a nice example of what you can do, no, that's something that is not allowed in this jurisdiction. Having a fridge in front of you, so that you can drink during meetings. Very worshipful Dennis. Have we started with our poll? Let's just wait for everyone to finish.
Kuya Teddy,
Yeah.
I think the signal is really bad. It's not moving up, but I think they can send their messages to their answer to the chat, and we can just do
Okay.
it from the chat. And
Okay. Okay. Okay.
most of the answers are letter B. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
oh, majority are saying letter B. Kuya Teddy,
Ikaw, Kuya Dennis, anong tingin mo?
kailangan mo ba akong on the spot naman?
Okay, okay. I'll not put you on the spot.
Baka naman pag may sinabi ko rito, sabihin nila, di man lang tayo nag-usap.
I will not. Okay, okay. Let's not know. The majority of the answers are B, right?
B. Actually, there
Are
are
there are
answers in letter D and letter A.
okay? How
But
many
I don't
answered
see
D?
any answer in letter C, Kuya Teddy.
Okay, okay,
One, there's only one, letter C, yeah.
okay. Also, you can't put the poll up.
I cannot put the poll up, Kuya Teddy. Sorry, I don't know. I think the signal is really bad on my end.
Okay, okay.
It's
Let's give one more minute for everyone to complete. Okay, and then I'll give you the answers. Okay, everyone. From the answers, okay, as recorded in the Facebook chat, it appears that many of you have said B. Okay, brethren, if my question were, how many Masonic landmarks are there in the Grand Lodge of the Philippines? Okay, B would be correct. We do recognize 25 landmarks. But brethren, my question is not how many Masonic landmarks are there. Because as you will see later, okay, another Masonic jurist and some jurisdictions have actually adopted his list, okay, in the form of Right Worshipful Roscoe Pound, former dean of Harvard Law School. Uh, the first jurisdiction that adopted his set of landmarks of 7 landmarks uh, is Massachusetts. Okay, if you were from Massachusetts and the question would be how many Masonic landmarks are there, and you are a Massachusetts Mason, your answer would be A. Okay, and if you are a grandmaster in North America who is been asked to recognize, okay, a jurisdiction on whether it's regular or not, and you follow the recommendations of the Commission on Information for Recognition, you will see that the Commission actually recognizes, that Commission to determine if a grand jurisdiction is regular or not, recognizes only 3 Masonic landmarks. So, the real correct answer here for that simple question is how many Masonic landmarks are there is really D, because it depends on where you sit. Okay, for of course, if you're a Filipino Mason, you have to say 25. But I didn't say how many Masonic landmarks are there recognized by the Grand Line. Very worshipful Maki, that other jurisdictions recognize different landmarks, and some don't even recognize Masonic traditional law. Okay, so that's important to note. With that in mind, first, let's, whoops, what happened? Okay, with that in mind, let's now go. Kuya Dennis, are we still on screen share? Let me share the screen again.
Yan, Kuya Teddy.
Okay,
Bumalik na. Okay na.
okay. So with that in mind, let me highlight that poll question. Yes, it was a trick question, but it highlights that when we talk of ancient landmarks here, we are only talking of the ancient landmarks as recognized in the Philippine Masonic jurisdiction, for which we have 25. You should know that other authorities, like Right Worshipful Roscoe Pound, okay, have different versions of what these are because these are traditionally unwritten. So noted Masonic jurists over time have different sets. And we'll see why. We'll see why they have different sets. What I want to highlight is that the set we adopted in the Philippines is the set advocated by very worshipful Albert Mackey, former past Grand Lecturer of South Carolina. I highlight that because in his time, there was no Corps of Grand Lecturer for South Carolina in that Masonic jurisdiction. He was the only one. He had the Corps of Inspectors, but there was only one. He was the only one functioning as the instructional authority for our philosophical system there. That's why he's called past Grand Lecturer. Okay, Maki, very worshipful Maki proposed 25, and we can divide them essentially into four categories. 7 landmarks relating to life in the craft or the Masonic system itself. 5 landmarks that focus on qualifications of the brethren. 8 landmarks that focus on the Grand Lodge governance. And 5 landmarks that focus on Lodge governance. Very worshipful Maki's view was to be comprehensive, to be able to describe comprehensively the complete system of what craft Freemasonry is. That is different from the essentialist, and I want to highlight that word, essentialist view of Right Worshipful Roscoe Pound. Who was Right Worshipful Roscoe Pound? He's the former dean of Harvard Law School. He served as dean for 2 decades, actually, from the 1920s to the early 1940s. He's very well quoted. His academic articles are very well quoted in American law, very well respected, particularly during the time he served as dean of Harvard Law School. And he eventually uh, served as uh, deputy grandmaster for Massachusetts. That's why he's right worshipful. For very personal reasons, I think health, he was not able to move to grandmaster, no. But he's a former deputy grandmaster, and he took a contrarian view to Maki. Maki tried to say, if we're going to describe the philosophical system, what are the true characteristics of the philosophical system that is craft Freemasonry? What should we come up with? And he came up with 25. Ross, a very right worshipful Pound, however, said, no. I mean, we should focus on the true essentials, the things that truly don't change. And that is why for him, okay, and these are all of these are part of Maki's landmarks. For him, there are only 7, which we will get to later. Okay, but I want to highlight that in the Grand Lodge of the Philippines, we have this 25 because we adopted the comprehensive approach. Okay, if you want to describe Freemasonry to a friend, who's interested. Okay? And you have time to do it over coffee, not just an elevator ride, but time to sit down, do it over coffee. You cannot go wrong with very worshipful Maki's characteristics. However, if you only have an elevator ride to describe the essentials of craft Freemasonry, you cannot go wrong with Right Worshipful Pound's 7 landmarks, because all those 7 are part of Very Worshipful Maki's list. And the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, and I understand, you'll see later, some other jurisdictions have chosen to go the route of Right Worshipful Pound and adopt only 7. We'll go to that later. But first, what are those 25? What are the essentials of craft masonry? If you have a friend who wants to join, you want to instruct him, okay? How can you give him a comprehensive picture? You go with these 4 categories. Let's start with the first, okay? Uh, Before we go to those categories, let's define, okay? Whether it's pound or whether it's Maki, okay, or another authority. There are other authorities, okay? Landmarks essentially are, okay, those universal concepts that define our order. You can see that in the definition of Very Worshipful Maki, or also in the definition of Right Worshipful Pound. Universal, unalterable, unrepealable. They are the essence of the craft. That is why it's very important to know this. And unfortunately, for many brethren, maybe it's because we don't highlight this enough in our basic Masonic education. Many brethren don't even know the whole list. But they are if you go by Maki and Pound, the universal, unalterable, unrepealable fundamentals of what our philosophy is. And they have 3 purposes. First is defining. What do you mean by regular Freemasonry? These define it. Whether you take the comprehensive approach of Maki or the essentialist approach of Pound. Okay? What is regular Freemasonry? And therefore, who can be a member? Because the philosophy is there to serve someone. That is our members. So it defines. The landmarks define what our philosophy is for and who will benefit from it. Second, they also instruct. How do you live out this philosophy? This is a secular philosophy. Okay? How do you live it out? Okay? And third, they establish norms. Where does Masonic authority emanate from? How is it exercised? Those are the 3 purposes of landmarks. And with that in mind, then we can understand, therefore, why Albert Maki, Very Worshipful Albert Maki, has picked these 25. And later, Right Worshipful Pound has picked these 7. Okay? Let's go to the first category. First, essentially, are the landmarks, according to Very Worshipful Maki, which define life in the craft. You'll see there 3 types of landmarks. The very first list, landmarks 1, 2, 3, and 24, define what the philosophical system of Freemasonry is. The fact that it is based on symbolism and allegory, which is the vessel to teach and to contemplate what is taught. That's our Masonic modes of recognition. Landmark number 1. Okay? The fact that it is in 3 degrees. Okay? It is a conceptual platform for learning. Remember, we talked about this last month. From a state of unconscious incompetence, you don't know, you are initiated to a state of conscious incompetence. Uy, this is something that can help me. So that you can be passed to something, a state where you can practice it deliberately, conscious competence. You practice it as a fellow craft. So that symbolically, for the rest of your life, you can become a master of the philosophy. When it becomes you become unconscious competent, it becomes a part of you. That's the division of the craft into 3 degrees, the conceptual platform that it's built on. Landmark 2, Needless to state, we learned from last time that the third degree contains a legend, which is the instructional climax and the point of the system. Landmark 3, right? Some of you might know this as the Hiramic legend. Okay? For those of you who are not into Freemasonry or thinking, you'll have to know that when you enter. Okay? And then, of course, Landmark 24 highlights what we mean by philosophical system. It's a speculative science built on an operative hearts. We are not building cathedrals like our operative brethren. We're not building actual cathedrals. We are building cathedrals in our hearts. Okay? 1, 2, 3, and 24, those landmarks define our philosophical system. And landmarks 11 and 23 highlight the way we practice that philosophy. 11 highlights the necessity for tiling lodges so that only brethren can participate in the ceremony. Why? Not because we want to be super secret, okay? Not because of conspiracy theories. It is because collectively, Masonic work is best done privately to facilitate contemplation. That leads us to landmark 23, the privacy of the institution. There's no point in you know, making yabang or highlighting that we're doing this, because what we're doing is building something within our hearts, building our consciences. Okay, the cathedral in the hearts concept. Okay, and to do that, okay, that's done with you reflecting every day. That's not done with you doing a blog stream of consciousness saying this is what I do. You know, it's like you confessing in public. That's not the way Freemasonry is done. It is done in a contemplative manner, okay? And within the lodge, it's done privately among brethren. That is privacy and contemplation. That's landmarks 11 and 23. Okay? Because it is built this way, okay, there is a preference against innovation. That is landmark 25, the last landmark of Maki. This cannot be changed because everything that has been developed to make it reach to this point, the essentials, they are there for a reason. So when you do the ritual, you're not supposed to innovate, because every word, every action, like the circumambulation, we described that last month, that when you go around the room, that has meaning. Okay? When you are pointed to something, or when you're asked to do something, everything has meaning. That is why you have a preference against innovation, which doesn't mean to say that we don't change rituals. We do sometimes, right? Grand lodges do change rituals, but it has to be done at a communication. What is this saying is that there is a preference against innovation because everything has a meaning in our instructional system. So that's life in the craft. Again, after that, you have landmarks that relate to who will benefit from that philosophical system. Who is it for? What is it meant to serve? It's meant to serve first and foremost the brethren. That is why landmark 18, there are three uh, 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 types of landmarks in this category. The very first type is our traditional qualifications. We are here to mentor men to become better. That's why your model has to be a male. He has to be capable of mentally and physically experiencing the degrees. He must be freeborn. He must not be subject to any kind of influence, and he must be mature enough to learn what we're teaching him. Okay? For those of you who are Masons, you will know that you are required to memorize that list. Okay? That long list. Okay? That man is freeborn. You cannot make a woman a Mason, at least in our grand jurisdiction, because of it's a philosophical system to mentor men better. You cannot allow a fool to enter versus somebody of unsound mind. A fool is somebody who has mercenary motives, on only mercenary motives for entering. That is based on this landmark, landmark 18. Okay? In addition to those traditional qualifications, 19, 20, and 21 in turn touch on the importance of one's faith and conscience in Freemasonry. As most worshipful, Danny Angeles, our Grand Secretary, likes to highlight, it is a secular philosophy. There is no salvation in Freemasonry. If you are going into it, entering, thinking that it is your religion, you will make it your religion of choice. I'm sorry to say to those who are thinking that they will find religion here, they will not, because the philosophy is not a religious system. Okay. However, you are required to have a faith precisely because it is not a religion, and it is in your faith that you leverage that philosophy to make you a better man. It is monotheistic because, okay, that faith must provide you with a divine plan for the afterlife. Because if it weren't, then there's then there's no point in you, not being hedonistic, or being hedonistic. Okay, the divine plan is there because it highlights that we are meant to be good, not to be what we want to be just because we want to. Okay, so that's 19 and 20. That is different, okay, from landmark 21. And landmark 21 is clear. Have a volume of sacred law in every lodge. I have been asked this many times by some brethren who've taken the time to study this. Okay, I've been asked this 3 or 4 times already. Why are there separate landmarks between a belief in a monotheistic deity and at the same time a volume of sacred law? Don't they talk about the same thing, that you must be religious? Well, in general they do, but it is important that they be separate landmarks, because landmark 19 talks about the necessity for having a monotheistic deity as your God. But 21 highlights that you can't just stop there. You must use your religion to sanctify your actions here in our very brief time on earth. And what guides you? The revelation of your God in your holy writings. That is your volume of sacred law. That's why we call it sacred law, the Bible, because it is our ethical guide as we adopt this philosophy for bettering ourselves. We leverage the philosophy. Okay, if you're a Catholic or a Christian, effectively you are leveraging this secular philosophy to sanctify your life here on earth. And you do that with the volume of sacred law, the revelation of your God as your guide. Doesn't change whether you're a Muslim, whether you're Hindu, as we'll see later, or you're Sikh. It doesn't change. You have revelation, and you use that to apply the philosophy within the parameters of your faith. Okay? There is one more subcategory here. All brethren must recognize that when they enter into the craft, they are peers as to each other. Because that is truly, landmark 22 highlights that the concept of a lodge, not as a physical place, but as a gathering of equal brethren trying to better themselves. Okay, like the brethren here. I just want to highlight to the brother in the middle, if you don't recognize him, he's brother Deo Macalma of my lodge, Teodoro M. Cala 136. Friend Brud Bubuita informed me that he's recently installed as the new High Sheriff of Katimugan Shrine Club. Congratulations, Kuya Deo. Okay? So, they're all equal. You are among peers. You have, that is a qualification that is set by landmark 22. So these 5 landmarks highlight who benefit and who are best served by this philosophy. That way we there first is a just wait for the slide to change. Okay, governs us of govern worshipful mapping system of grand lodge governance. All of our modern that you see in our Masonic book, they emanate from these landmarks. Okay. And they are divided essentially into 3 types of norms. The first norms highlights the concept of Masonic trust, the governance of the fraternity by a Grand Master. It says, landmark 4, governance of the fraternity by a Grand Master, who is the supreme governing authority within the grand jurisdiction. Why? Because all the brethren put their trust in him. They elected him. Okay? When they entered the craft, the judge was there, but not the Grand Master. They elect him. And he must fulfill his duties in accordance with that trust. That is landmark 4. Okay? It's the supreme Masonic authority in between communications. When in a trust, he gives it back to the brethren, and the brethren pass that on to the next Grand Master. Okay? And who does the Grand Master govern? That is landmark 17. All brethren residing in the Masonic jurisdiction. Not the lodge. Not the lodge. It's all brethren residing in the Masonic jurisdiction. Even though they may not even be a member. Let's say, you're a member of the Grand Lodge of California, you come here for a vacation. Masonically, you're in the Masonic territory of the Philippines, you are subject to our jurisdiction. Okay? That is why this is the basis for subsequently what we call the doctrine of exclusive territorial jurisdiction. Among regular Grand Lodges, there can only be 1 Grand Lodge per Masonic jurisdiction because of this landmark. This is not the same in Continental Freemasonry. Continental Freemasonry, they don't have this landmark because they are governed differently. Okay? So that's 17. After that, we have 4 landmarks that relate to special prerogatives of the Grand Master to ensure the continuity and sustainability of the craft. I want to highlight there. Okay? These 4 special prerogatives of the Grand Master are there to primarily ensure the continuity and sustainability of the craft. What are these 4 prerogatives? The prerogative of the Grand Master to preside over every assembly of the craft. Okay? Why? Because if he needs to do something, he can take over a lodge during its meeting or the Grand Lodge. That is his prerogative. That emanates from him being the supreme authority in the Masonic jurisdiction. Okay? Now, in special circumstances, he may need to exercise, okay, in addition to this plenary special prerogative, landmark 5, the following 3 special prerogatives, 6, 7, and 8. Okay? From time to time, he may need to grant an exception to the rules so that a lodge can confer degrees. Mahirap because sometimes lodges, they cannot meet for like there was a typhoon. Okay, that's why you see in our Masonic law book, the Grand Master can issue a dispensation through his DDGM so that the lodge can meet outside of what's provided in their charter. Landmark 6. Okay, he has the prerogative to give dispensations for the opening and holding of lodges. Okay, why? It may be important for brethren to hold lodges, okay, in addition to conferring degrees, to have special meetings, to do something. Like, for example, namatay yung master, right? They need to have a special election if they call for it. Special meetings, that's the 7. Okay? And even in the eventuality that there was, for example, and this happened in the Grand Lodge of Vermont in the 1820s when they were almost decimated. Okay? If for any reason he's the only Grand Master left, he's the only Master Mason left in the jurisdiction, he can rebuild the lodge, okay, by making Masons on site. Because normally you need 357 brethren, to confer degrees. This is a very special exception. If he needs to ensure continuity and sustainability in a situation like the 1820s, where because of persecution, the Grand Lodge of Vermont almost died. He has the authority by himself, without any other Mason, to make Masons on site. Now that this prerogative has evolved in the modern times. This has also been used now to make very senior and distinguished non-Masons Masons, because it may be difficult because of their schedule, for example, to join normally, right? We've had two Masons on site in this grand jurisdiction. Brother Eugene Gilmore, the former Deputy Governor General in the 1920s, and Brother Douglas MacArthur. Because of their schedules, it was very difficult for them to start from scratch. Okay? And because it can be a long process. So what the then Grand Master did was, on separate occasions, they made them masters on site. In the case of Brother MacArthur, he was made a member of Manila Lodge number 1. Today, Manila Mount Lebanon number 1, so that he can eventually witness the full initiation, passing, and racing. But he was brought in because his schedule could not permit him to do the degrees in time, and his welcome him to the craft would benefit the craft, and that's why the current Grand Master made him a Masons on site. If you want to know, that is the reason why we have Landmark 8. It's not because they can just exercise this prerogative any way they want to. It's a fail-safe. If the Grand Master is the only Master Mason left, he can repopulate the Grand Lodge and lodges using this. Now, over time, because that's not really necessary, rather than it being inactive, we have twice in the more than 100 years of this Grand Lodge exercised this twice to make Masons in site in very specific occasions. Okay? Compared to this, we have two inalienable rights that Grand Masters cannot tamper with. And that is Landmark 12, which is the right of every Mason to participate in meetings of the craft. This became controversial just this decade, right? It doesn't mean that just because you participate, you can vote. Okay? But Landmark 12 highlights, and that's why it's important to know this from time to time, that every brother can attend general meetings of the craft or instruct representatives. That's what we do in the modern times as to voting, right? Who can vote? Master, the two wardens, and the immediate past master to represent the past masters. The lodge can instruct them, the brethren of the lodge can instruct them on how to vote before they go to an ANCOM. That's Landmark 12. That's the basis for it. And then, of course, okay, in the unusual circumstance where the trust, this concept of trust is violated, a brother can appeal for Masonic justice, okay, when that concept has been violated. That is Landmark 13. And that constitutes the landmarks for how we govern ourselves as a Grand Lodge. Okay? Which leads us to the final landmarks of Very Worshipful Maki. These 5 landmarks on how lodge govern themselves. Okay? Landmark, again, these are basically, there are 3 classes of this. Landmarks 9 and 10 relates to how the lodge is governed. Okay? Landmark 9 relates to the fact that when you talk about a lodge, you are not talking about the temple, the meeting place, the physical place. A lodge, you can meet any, with the dispensation, you can meet anywhere, even though you're chartered for a specific locality. But a lodge is not a meeting place, but the gathering of brethren. It is when brethren gather and do Masonic work. That is a lodge. Okay? When we when the lodge does its work, that is when it truly is a lodge. Okay, that's landmark 9. And supreme among the brethren there, first among equals, is the worshipful master. His Masonic authority is defined in landmark 10. The government of the lodge is uh, conducted by a worshipful master as assisted by 2 wardens. The point of the 2 wardens is to ensure sustainability. Okay, they are moving up to become master, so they are being prepared in those 2 years or 1 year that they are a warden. Okay, so within the lodge, he is the supreme governing authority. If our constitution does not provide, okay, and the provisions there, it provides in those cases where the brethren must be safeguarded, like for example, uh, uh, motions for reconsideration. You must have the unanimous petitioners whose balloting has been rejected. You have to have unanimous vote, right? Those are there as safeguards. But in general, a worshipful master does not call for a vote. A worshipful master, if the Masonic law book does not provide, can decide by himself, because we are not a democracy. Okay? Can I highlight that again? We are not a democracy. Okay? Our system of governance is a meritocracy based on your fitness and character to fulfill the office. So, if it's not provided, the worshipful master will decide for the lodge. He can, of course, give it to his discretion and say, "Oh, brethren, let's have a vote." No problem. That's within his discretion. But that does not take away from the fact that during his term, he is the supreme Mason governing authority within his lodge. Within his lodge. And that has implications later in another landmark. Okay? Now, as you highlighted earlier, we're all equal peers. That's in the regulations on life of the craft, right? We have 2 landmarks that implement that concept that we are all peers. The first of this landmark relates to the right of every Mason to visit and sit in every regular lodge. Why? Because we're all equal. And if you want to attend, you can attend because that's your right. You cannot say that one lodge, okay, is exclusive na they're all lawyers and mga lawyers lang dito. Hindi pwede ganun. You cannot be exclusive. But at the same time, okay, there may be reasons why the lodge will exclude the brother for a particular reason. Like for example, they are discussing something that is sensitive, that relates to picks between brethren that they're trying to resolve. There are reasons why you can be excluded from a specific meeting. But in general, you have a right to visit every lodge because we're all equal. Landmark 14. The safeguard there is landmark 15. We're all equal, but that relates to everybody who is a member, who is a regular Freemason. You have to keep kawans, those who are not, and those who are usiceros, which is the Tagalog term for kawan, who just want to go in and want to spy on what we do, because that is not, Masonic work is best done privately, right? So how do you safeguard against that? That's landmark 15. You examine brethren before they come in, right? Now, again, the final landmark here, the last of these 25, last but not the least, relates to the fact that uh, lodges are sovereign as to each other. Remember that we talked about vertical relationships, because each worshipful master according to Landmark 10, is supreme as the supreme governing authority within his lodge. Okay, that also means correspondingly Landmark 16. Every lodge has mastery of every master has mastery of the lodge of the affairs of his particular lodge. And that is why you see, I gave one example in our Masonic law book that brethren cannot interfere. They can visit, but they cannot interfere in the affairs of another lodge because they are sovereign as to their own affairs. And that is why this has been questioned. Bakit yung uh, let's say in the same Masonic district, okay, like in Manila, NCRB or NCRA, everybody has equal jurisdiction to get somebody who lives or works in Manila, right? Yung kaaway mo nasa kabilang lodge. I've been asked this question as a grand lecture. Bakit pag ikaw hindi member, if you are not a member of that lodge, how come your objection will not automatically blackball him? It's because of Landmark 16. If you have something against that petitioner and you're not a member of the lodge, you must raise it to the Committee on Investigation. If you know them, if you don't, because they're generally confidential, if you don't, then you raise it with the Worshipful Master, who will consider it. But it is not automatic. Okay? It is not automatic. So, for those of you who are non-Masons and are watching in, I need to highlight, how does this apply to you specifically? It applies to you in the sense that it is always best before you join a lodge that you get to know that lodge's brethren. You get to know that, hey, you will fit in with them and that the lodge is convenient enough for you to attend the meetings because they have complete authority to decide whether you will join our ranks or not. So who your mother lodge will be is important. Okay, so that in a nutshell, in 4 categories, is why we adopted the 25 landmarks. Because we adopted the comprehensive approach of Very Worshipful Maki, that is why in the 1920s we adopted the landmarks, okay, of Maki. Which is not to say that there are different versions of these landmarks. Another persuasive version is that given by Right Worshipful Roscoe Pound, and this was adopted by his own grand jurisdiction and the grand jurisdiction of 4 other U.S. Grand Lodges. Okay, take a look at his own list. You'll see here that compared to Very Worshipful Maki, Right Worshipful Pound adopts not a comprehensive approach but a essentialist approach. If we really look at the core of what our philosophical system is, what will we be left with? That's why he only has 7 landmarks. And if you have time, you can read it in his own book. It's as popular as Maki's Jurisprudence of Freemasonry. It's lectures on Masonic jurisprudence. You know, if you have these 2 books as a start, if you're going, for example, attending the IMES lectures, can't go wrong with this. Let me highlight that all 7 of these landmarks are part of Maki's list. Okay. And what are these? There are basically 4 categories here. The first 2 categories relate to qualifications. Okay. The importance of having a monotheistic faith. Okay. And that guiding you as you apply your philosophy. That's landmarks 1, 2, and 3. You are applying it in terms of being mentored as a man, freeborn and of age. That's the traditional qualifications of a Mason. That's landmark 7. So these 4 landmarks relate to the fact that there's no salvation in Freemasonry. It's a secular philosophy. You need your faith to truly sanctify yourself and make you a better man. And who is it for? That's landmark 7. Okay. And then Right Worshipful Pound highlights, okay, what truly is essential about the philosophical system. One, our use of symbolism and allegory. We moved from an operative art, building cathedrals, physical cathedrals, to building cathedrals in our hearts. That's landmark 6. And the most important lesson of this philosophical system is, of course, the legend in the third degree. Landmark 4. 6 and 4, essentially. What Right Worshipful Roscoe Pound is highlighting is 6 and 4 essentially is what our philosophical system really should really teach. And how do we practice it? We practice it by every day facilitating contemplation. And that is why the Masonic concept of secrecy or privacy, which is really privacy, is landmark 5 in Right Worshipful Roscoe Pound's list. So 1, 2, 3, and 7 relates to who can be a Mason, and 4, 5, and 6 relate to what that Freemason studies. To Right Worshipful Pound, okay, what he's trying to do is saying, if we were to really cut it to essentials, not lodge governance, not grand lodge governments, but what is their philosophy and who practices it, in an elevator ride, you can explain this. This is what our philosophy is, and this is who will benefit from it. Now, that may be too essentialist for you, right? All of these 7 are part of Maki's list. Okay, Maki is more comprehensive. Very Worshipful Maki highlights, okay, not just what is our philosophical system, but who can join, how we govern ourselves, okay, as lodges, and how we govern ourselves within the Grand Lodge jurisdiction. So that was a lot to take in, right? So to take a break, let's go to poll 2. Okay, now we know what our ancient landmarks are in the Grand Lodge of the Philippines. Let's now go to see other grand jurisdictions. But before that, okay, here's something we can take a guess at. Which ancient landmark is not generally accepted by, take note of the question, not generally accepted by Grand Masters of U.S. Grand Lodges? Is it A, belief in God? B, the craft is governed in each Masonic jurisdiction by a Grand Master? Ooh, Grand Masters of U.S. Lodge sounds like me, di ba? C, the volume of sacred law is an indispensable part of any lodge's furniture. Aba, if you fail to distinguish between A and C, that means you weren't listening, brethren. Okay, we explained why. Okay, A relates to monotheistic faith. C relates to conscience. Okay. D, prohibition on religious and partisan discussion within the lodges. Baka continental Freemason tayo dito. Di baka yan yung mali, di ba, or something. Okay. So, which ancient landmark is not generally accepted by Grand Masters of U.S. Grand Lodges? Kuya Dennis, can we have poll now? Are you okay na with the poll? Very Worshipful Dennis? Or do we rely on the sayang, because I have to tell you, brethren, yon there. Now the poll is up. So for those who registered for I have, now you can benefit from your registration in the Zoom portal. While I'm looking there, those who Kuya Dennis is also monitoring the Facebook chat to see how the answers are going there. Brethren naman, look, we are not grading you, no? Do not change your answers, please. Okay, we're not grading you. If we're able to issue certificates of attendance for you registering for every episode in April, we will not take into account if you failed all the tests. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a hint now. Some of them are meant to be tricky, and I have to tell you, this current list that questions we have now is kind of tricky for this episode. Okay. Oh, which ancient landmark is not generally accepted? I'm not gonna ask you, Kuya Dennis, right? Maybe we can ask Very Worshipful Oliver Yabut. our Assistant Grand Secretary. Do you have an idea? Very worshipful, Oliver?
Ayaw niya,
Very
Kuya
wish.
Teddy. Same
Okay,
reason.
very shy. Very shy. Alam mo kasi, alam mo kasi, that's why I put this graphic while we're completing the, I don't know, very often, we have our dinosaur brains that must be developed into, with our hearts and consciences. But we start out with these Masonic brains, right? Ito, when it comes to giving criticism, malaki-laki, di ba? But when it comes to accepting criticism, tingnan mo kung gano'ng kaliit yung, this is a good guide to how Masonic brains are when they start out with the craft. There's an overemphasis in learning ritual, which is okay, because in order to understand it, you first have to learn it, right? But you have to develop, increase that gland to accept what is taught to you, diba? And reduce the excuse center, right? Oh, how is our Facebook going along, Kuya Dennis?
Kuya Teddy, actually, we're getting so much numbers from our Facebook streaming. Sandali may pinadala sa akin na bago si Kuya Harold We'd like to take the cable tow team,
Okay.
for handling this for us. And
Yeah.
being efficiently and effectively disseminating to brethren, everything that we're working on right now. Ang sabi nila sa akin, there are like about 200 already watching FB Live.
Okay.
Aside from 180, in this webinar.
And
So,
Kuya Dennis, we should thank them that they posted there. So those who are not able to watch tonight, they can watch the replays of this.
yes. Immediately after, it will,
Yeah.
it will be, they can review and see what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, I think with Eddie, we're good. We have like
Okay.
about
We can end the poll
58
now
or
and
59%.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's end the poll now. Maraming natatakot. Don't worry. I have to admit these questions are tricky. This is a particularly tricky set, okay? So here are the results of the poll. The majority of you said that ancient landmark that is not generally accepted by, I am not talking of Grand Lodges. Brethren, I am not talking of Grand Lodges. I am talking of Grand Masters. Why? They have a conference of Grand Masters for Masons in North America. This is the conference of all Grand Masters of Masons in North America. Our Grand Masters often go, okay, and attend. Not all, but they do. They attend this conference. Usually, if it's too cold, they don't go. Like if it's for the year na it ends up in North Dakota, most likely yung Grandmaster baka hindi pumunta. But, if you end up in Hawaii or California, baka pwede pa, right? So, but it's a conference of all Grandmasters, okay? And I want to highlight that conference has a commission on information and recognition, which studies whether Grand Lodges can be recognized as regular Grand Lodges, so that the Grand Lodges in the US, the 50 states plus the District of Columbia, can enter into Masonic amity with them. You will see later, brethren, that its definition of ancient landmarks is just 3. Remember the first poll? There were 3. Why 3? Because in this situation, the ancient landmarks recognized by that commission, which is a committee of Grand Masters that is persuasive on all Grand Masters in that conference, the 51, say that actually, by consensus, we appear to recognize only 3. What are those 3? Many of you are correct in that the least answer given here is A, belief in God. Yes, that is recognized. You must have a belief in God, okay, in a monotheistic God to be a regular Freemason. So, those of you answered that, baka you got the question wrong. Okay, if not, please see me. We can discuss this again in detail. Okay. Some of you said C, volume of sacred law. I don't know if this will be a surprise for you, but that also is accepted as an ancient landmark by all Grand Masters in the 51 Grand Lodges of the United States. Not the Grand Lodge, not their Grand Lodges, but that conference of Grand Masters, they accept that the volume of sacred law, which is the use of your faith to guide your conscience, as manifested in the revelation to you, your Bible, or your Quran, okay, or your Gita, okay, that use of that volume to guide your conscience, that is also an ancient landmark. C. Okay? So now we're left with two. Da, 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 da. Ano, Kuya Dennis? You wanna, ano, or saka na? Okay, okay. So we're left with two, no? Is it B or D? Which is the one that is not recognized as an ancient landmark? As you know, brethren, regular Freemasons cannot discuss religion or partisan politics within the lodge. That is not just a rule of the in all 51 jurisdictions. That is even recognized, as you will see later, and that's as what we've talked about last October by the United Grand Lodge of England. So, while it is not mentioned by Mackey, while it is not mentioned by Pound, the Conference of Grand Masters for North America, of Masons in North America, recognizes the prohibition on religious and partisan discussion within the lodge as a landmark. Surprise, surprise. I told you this was a trick question. Does that mean that the concept of the craft being governed by a Grand Master is not an ancient landmark? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there is no consensus that it is among American Grand Masters. The way there is consensus as to belief in God, volume of sacred law or conscience, and the prohibition on religious and partisan discussions as to regular Freemasons. Obviously, if you're a continental Freemason, your first answer would be D, right? But we are regular Freemasons. So, I guess you can see now it was a trick question. We're not talking about Grand Lodges. We are talking about the opinion of Grand Masters. Why? Because, brethren, this is unwritten law. And our audience, or for those who are interested, who are tuning in, when we are talking about Masonic landmarks, we are talking of the traditional notion of unwritten law, which today we call traditional law. And therefore, because authorities must figure out how to decide whether this is indeed an ancient landmark, opinions differ. So we'll talk about how opinions differ in the United States to show you the diversity of opinions here. And then we want to highlight, you're going to notice, remember the prohibition on religious and partisan discussion within the lodge. Sinabi ba yan ni Mackey? Hindi naman sinabi ni Mackey yan. Sinabi ba yan ni Pound? Hindi naman sinabi ni Pound yan eh. That is because modern versions of what we call ancient landmarks have been developed. And I'm going to give the two most popular. The Mother Grand Lodge of the world, the United Grand Lodge of England, has, this is something we already took up in a previous webinar episode, the 8 basic principles for Grand Lodge recognition. When we define what Freemasonry is about, those can be considered modern landmarks because they define who is a regular, what is a regular Grand Lodge, right? In the same sense, because there's so much diversity in U.S. states as to what constitutes the ancient landmarks, the Commission of Grand Masters of Masons in North America, their committee to decide whether that recommends whether a Grand Lodge is deemed regular or not, recognizes that, okay, there seems to be consensus as to 3 ancient landmarks. And surprisingly, the governance of the craft by a Grand Master is not one of them yet, though it may be in the future, right? So the reason why I have this there is, as you know, our Grand Lodge, we cherish our connections with all of our our daughter Grand Lodges, China and Japan, and Mother Grand Lodge, California. And we make it a point. We make it a point to, interact regularly with them. We have a very robust diplomatic corps, and as much as possible, we always reach out to them. This is the GLP delegation, the 2019 ANCOM, and this is what we do. Of course, that's me and Most Worshipful June. Of course, we have to eat, no? Which reminds me, one of the topics I wanted to bring, if I had my way, was Masonic cuisine. But one of the things you're taught as a grand lecture is to have discretion. Okay? And I realized that if I brought it up to Most Worshipful June, baka bukas hindi na ako SGL. Kaya maybe that topic of Masonic cuisine is maybe for another time. Okay? But this just highlights that, a very big part of Freemasonry is traveling abroad and meeting brethren, not just foreign brethren, but our Filipino brethren abroad, who are very proud of the fact, especially in California and Australia, are very proud of the fact that we have a very dynamic Grand Lodge here. Okay, so let's go to landmarks in the 51 U.S. Masonic jurisdictions. You might be surprised, brethren. 25 of those 51 do not recognize Masonic traditional law. Why would that be the case? Because as I previously hinted, it takes some time for brethren to decide who is authoritative enough to say these are immemorial. So there's a lot of debate here. So that's why half of Grand Lodges in the US actually don't recognize any form of Masonic traditional law. Okay? So we're actually among the exceptions in the world which have adopted Maquis. In the United States, only 6, okay, have adopted Maquis list of 25, and only 4 have adopted some form of that, not a complete list, but 4 others have adopted. So only 10 have relied on Maquis. If you look at Pound, the essentialist approach as against a comprehensive approach, only 5, but you have to take into account that Pound's list only came about in the 1930s, okay? So only 5 have adopted the essentialist approach, okay? And there are 8 who have adopted their own. There are 2, Connecticut and Tennessee, who have a list of 15 that is not derived from Maquis or Pound, even though some landmarks are similar. Okay, and then there are 3 who don't say that they have a list of landmarks, but they have some other form of recognition by saying that, these are ancient customs which are persuasive. So when you look at it, only a minority of Grand Lodges actually recognize. And here I put in all of the mother Grand Lodges and grandmother Grand Lodges of the GLP, starting with California, going down. California was the product of the District of Columbia, lodges from the District of Columbia, Missouri, Connecticut, and those Grand Lodges were in turn formed by lodges from Tennessee, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, all the way down to Massachusetts. Massachusetts, the most senior one here. If you look here, you'll see that 6 of these lodges, including California, there's no recognition of Masonic traditional law. What does that mean? Does it mean that what ancient landmarks are? That's why you have this diversity. Okay? And it is because you have this diversity that we have modern lists. In a previous episode, I already brought this up. The Mother Grand Lodge of the world, where the most every Grand Lodge here, down to the most senior, the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, Mother Grand Lodge of the world, the United Grand Lodge of England, you can say that its 8 basic principles for Grand Lodge recognition are a modern form. Modern form. They don't say it's landmark, but you can say it is a modern form of our Masonic landmarks. And we've taken this up previously. There are 8 of them, and you can see how similar they are. Belief in God, Masonic obligation, membership exclusively in males because we mentor each other, jurisdiction over the craft degrees, regularity of origin, three great lights, conscience, okay? But here, square and compasses, are added, tolerance and avoidance of innovation. So here you have the craft, what constitutes the ethical philosophy of the craft, and how is the craft, uh, how does the craft operate as a social institution? So this is one modern form of Masonic landmarks today. Knowing this allows you to better define the essentials of Freemasonry. And that is why we use this list instead of the ancient landmarks when we talked about what is Freemasonry. Okay? Let's now go to why we had Paul 3. The Conference of Grand Master of Masons in North America is aware of this challenge that many jurisdictions have yet to have consensus on what the ancient landmarks are. So they have a committee, they have a standing committee called the Commission on Information for Recognition. So that, for example, okay, if somebody has this bright idea to spring up in a Masonic jurisdiction, like ours, for example, in a province like Cavite, for example, they will never be recognized as Masonic because they would violate one of the three standards of recognition here. And if you go to the site, you'll see, uh, irregular Freemasons who've tried to set up, they cannot join because nga of these standards of recognition. In short, this is persuasive on grad lodges. What are the three standards of recognition set by the CGMMNA Standing Committee on Information for Recognition, the Commission on Information Recognition? One, regularity of origin, similar to UGLE's first principle. Second, exclusive territorial jurisdiction, which we know is sourced from Mackey's 17th landmark. And then, specifically, unlike the UGLE, the Commission says there appears to be, at least informally, in the 51 Grand Lodges, some consensus that these three already are, and I want to highlight that, already are defining landmarks of our philosophy. A belief in a monotheistic God, the use of conscience to guide our path, the volume of sacred law, as symbolized by the volume of sacred law, and the prohibition on the discussion of politics and religion. That's not in Mackey, that's not in Pound, but that has been defined previously by the UGLE. So now it appears that in order to be a regular Freemason, unlike Pound, unlike Right Worshipful Pound, unlike Very Worshipful Mackey, to the CGMMNA, this today is a modern, what we can call a modern version of this ancient landmark. Consensus among the 51, you cannot discuss politics and religion within the lodge. This is our concept of Masonic tolerance. Okay, so that's where we are. I highlighted that there's much diversity of opinion here, not because to say that the landmarks are illegitimate in any way. I'm highlighting that precisely because they are unwritten, there has been a challenge. There has been a challenge as to define truly what is immemorial. And so we now have, in addition to Roscoe, in addition to Pound and there are other Masonic jurists. In addition to what they propose, there are modern versions in the form of the UGLE and the Conference of Grand Masters of North America, their version, just three. Maybe in the future, 4 or 5. But right now, consensus for all 51, this is what they informally have a consensus belief as to what is truly defining as to what is ancient landmark. So with that, we have a picture, not just of the foundation of our Masonic legislation, trust that builds upon our comprehensive system of Masonic legislation and regulation, and where Masonic landmarks fit in. That leads us to, I think, the most important topic of this webinar now, which is paano ko ba magagamit to sa my daily life? How can I use this in my daily life? Okay? Before that, let's go to the last poll question. What timeless virtue during our discussion most relates to landmarks, highlighting the volume of sacred law as an indispensable part of a lodge's furniture? Brethren, you now know, you now know why it's a separate landmark from belief in God, right? Okay. So all of those landmarks, they provide us with virtues, right? So which of these best highlights which virtue here best highlights this landmark of volume of sacred law? Is it A, conscience? Is it B, tolerance? Is it C, divine will? Or, play safe tayo na lang dito, none of the above. What do you think? And brethren, unlike the first two questions, to give you a chance, I've already been giving clues during the discussion as to what that virtue is. Okay? So, very worshipful Dennis, let's have our last poll question for today.
With Eddie. Well, yeah.
Oh.
I don't know what's happening really with my signal. I'm sorry. There was a tree that cut into our subdivision this afternoon, and I
Ay,
think
ay,
it
ay.
really affected my connections. And they said they're still doing repairs right
Okay.
now. I'm sorry.
Maybe we
But
can look
anyway,
at the Facebook. Yeah.
yeah, maybe brethren, you can and those who are here, you can post it on chat. And so far, Kuya Teddy, I'm getting A as a reply.
Okay. Well, why don't you, let's see the answers. In the meantime, while the brethren are posting, let me highlight something useful here. With regard to what they see here, these are very good books for Christian Freemasons. As to remember, we're talking about
Yan, Kuya
no.
Teddy. Na-launch ka.
Oh
Yan,
shoot.
yan. Okay, okay. It's up, it's up, it's up. Please, please,
Okay,
please.
so while the
Go, go,
poll
go.
is ongoing, brethren, while you're answering the question, let me just highlight the three books here. For Christian Freemasons, you would find, I think, if you want to look up how you can best sanctify your faith using by leveraging our secular philosophy, these are three good places to start. Bible study for Freemasons, Sacred Secrets, they're readily available. And one by the former Grand Chaplain of the United Grand Lodge of England, the Reverend Neville Barker Cryer. He's a he's a he's a he's a minister, minister of the United Grand of the Church of England. Very popular Freemason. His compendium of Masonic prayers and graces, can't go wrong with that. I just want to highlight while we're finishing with the poll question here, these are examples of leveraging our Masonic philosophy in one's faith. For those who are not Freemasons, sometimes this has been used as a form of creating fake news by highlighting that, oh, yung pala may ganyan kayo, you're a religion. Okay? That cannot be farther from the truth. Okay? Let me highlight that again. You use the secular philosophy in your own faith, but how you apply it is up to you. So the Freemasons who wrote these books, they're not saying that Muslims cannot do the philosophy. They're saying in their faith, the Christian faith, this is how they apply their philosophy. The philosophy is not a religion. It is not dogmatic. How you apply it as a system of ethics in your faith, this is an example of how you do it. Okay? But how they apply it is not dogmatic on anybody else. Okay? It's how they apply it in a Christian setting. Okay? So, does that mean that we're actually a religion and that mixes everything up and worships several gods? No. Hello. Okay? Again, these are Christian Freemasons who are applying the system of ethics in the particular context of their religion. So, if you're Christian Freemasons like me, please look this up in the internet. You cannot go wrong with these first three. Okay? So, are we finished with the poll?
We'll end the poll now, Kuya Teddy. Okay.
Very wishful, Dennis.
Second.
Or you want to answer it? Or you want to answer it? Oh, let's not. Let's
Yun
not go
na.
into. Oh, we'll end the poll now. Let's see it. Okay. Here are the results. Okay, brethren, I'm so happy that the majority of you, given the fact that we were discussing it, picked the right answer. Yes, indeed. The volume of sacred law does not talk about having a belief in God. Yes, it does talk about religion, but more importantly, it highlights that you should apply your religious belief when you when you study the philosophy, and that involves using your conscience. So, what is tolerance? Well, that is the UGLE's seventh principle, right? You cannot discuss. You cannot discuss. I'm sorry, the UGLE's eighth principle. You cannot discuss religion and politics inside the lodge, right? Divine will. Oh, that's what we know. Ismakis founds the UGLE's landmark on the fact that you need to have a belief in God. So galing. I mean, at least we know now. I'm sure you answered correctly, Kuya Dennis and Kuya Oliver. Now that we know that we're getting the hang of it, let's go now to how we can apply Masonic landmarks in our daily life. When you look at it, in many uh, in many Western economies where regular Freemasonry is, you can see that they are very well uh, they are very well recognized in society. It's only where certain people with partisan agendas who want to that there's confusion that arises. I want to highlight that because here you can see this is a depiction, and this actually happened. This is historical fact. This is a depiction of most worshipful George Washington laying the cornerstone for what would become the United States Capitol, right? The fact that they allowed that highlights the esteem that the institution is, not just here in the Philippines, but there in the United States. And one reason for that is because our Masonic landmarks, if you look at them, distinctly describe our philosophical fraternity in terms of the timeless virtues we represent and the enduring governance norms of how we act towards each other daily, consistently. So when you look at it, there are actually, if you look at the two, look at the two traditional versions and the two modern versions of landmarks that I've talked about, you can distill them really as descriptions of these three timeless virtues and four enduring governance norms. What are these? Okay, let's go to timeless virtues. Okay, as you know, we are a system, or we're an ethical system that is meant to be practiced. Okay, let me go a bit non-Masonic first, so that because we tend to go really deep for brethren. For those who let me describe it in a way that is more familiar to you. How do you live an ethical life? Well, you can see here on this chart, how you end up deliberating about your values. This is not Masonic chart. This is a chart that highlights ethical living as highlighted by a thought leader in that field, Mr. Shane Snow. Okay, you live out. There are those areas in your life that you don't have control over, and those that you do. And to get to the point where you have your own principles that you decide, which you use to decide on what you do here at the end, you must take into account your context, who you are, and what you've experienced. That's something that happens to you. That's not something you can really control. Your genes provide your personality, right? Your guiding moral foundations, okay, about your feeling about what should be good or not, they come inherent to you because your God put them in there, right? But what can you control? What can you decide upon? Two things: what you value, what you value, okay, and second, your perspective in approaching your decision. So the landmarks today They are landmarks in the sense that they are timeless virtues or values that you can use to build that ethical code, that big pink circle here called principles. And in addition to that, you have the governance norms or perspectives or approaches for you to use and apply those values to create that ethical code. So, what are those timeless virtues that we will see later are highlighted by these traditional and modern versions of the landmarks? First, divine will. All Freemasons. Okay, so that's the non-Masonic model. Let's now go to the Masonic model. What are the three timeless values that all Freemasons share? So that these are the attributes that, that you come to champion when you make decisions. First is divine will. That all Freemasons leverage their ethical philosophy to better sanctify their lives in the context of their particular faith. Second, it's not just a religion that, I believe in God, period. They live it out daily through conscience. Freemasons strive daily to be more disciplined and committed in creating value and doing what is right. And third, we can see this from our modern version of the landmarks. We facilitate true dialogue despite differences in religious belief and partisan background. Remember, brethren, in June when we talked about Freemasonry being Filipino, right? And how that there was this sect in the Malolos Congress that wanted to make the Roman Catholic faith the official religion of the state. You can imagine where the Agrippians and the Muslims and the non-Catholics would end up with, right? As second-class citizens if that happened. Because of tolerance, Freemasons highlighted, that should not come about. There is a reason why the state must be separated from the church. That is what we live out daily. Divine will, conscience, and tolerance. And we do that by following these four approaches, which is the basis for all that we have in our Masonic law book. Some of you will recognize this already. Brotherly love, relief, and truth. But in addition to that, you can see that we have to add our our 3-degree model: initiation, passing, and racing. Because our 3-degree model is how we learn symbolically and actually. Okay, our 3-degree model highlights to us that learning really is not just somebody, and this is what happens when non-Masons who have a partisan agenda and want to spread fake news. This is what happens. They get any book, they misquote it, and they say that's Masonry. That's not Masonry, that's stupidity. Okay, because Freemasonry, learning in Freemasonry is not just about books. Real learning in Freemasonry is experiential. You go through the initiation, you go through the passing, you go through the racing. You experience it in order to learn. Okay? And symbolically, when you get to the 3rd degree, that is highlighted to you that learning never stops. Triumphs and tragedies that provide lessons for us to become better and further mature. Those, whether they're triumphs or tragedies, whether they're mistakes or our victories, they are there to teach us lessons. Keep learning and you will regret nothing, because everything bad that happens to you, you will learn a lesson. And everything good, in addition to cherishing, you will learn a lesson also. Then we come, of course, to our 3 basic tenets: brotherly love, philia, what we call as philia, or charity, or philia, our love for each other as peers. Diba? That is the concept earlier that I highlighted, the gathering of peer mentors. We become better by coaching each other, whispering good counsel, and assisting by extending one's cable toe to each other as we journey together in life. In short, we are the ones who, it is not us who says whether we are Freemasons or not. We may be members of the Philippine Masonic jurisdiction, okay? But at the end of our lives, it is our brethren who will judge if we are truly a disciple of the craft. So we do experiential learning through each other by mentoring each other. Okay? By mentoring each other. That's the concept of brotherly love. Okay? And that is founded on a perspective for the other. The second type, there are three types of love, right? Eros, romantic, philia, brotherly love, and your love for others, your love for humanity, perspective for the other, agape. That is what the really is the Masonic concept of relief. That is the foundation for the concept of Masonic trust. Leadership entails a genuine stewardship perspective that entails, remember the the eye, okay, the all-seeing eye. Leadership entails a genuine stewardship perspective that entails doing what is right, even though the only one looking is your God, because everybody else is doing something else. Okay, even though the only one looking is your God, the more so because when He will judge you, He's the one who knows. That is Masonic trust. You do it what is right because you know that your faith requires you to. You will be judged by what you do, not by if others catch you or not. Okay. And finally, brotherly love, relief. There's also the third tenet, truth. A commitment to truth through daily critical and creative thinking as well as personal reflection. Okay? Reason, creativity, and reflection leads to a life worth living. Your God, the God of your faith when you entered Freemasonry, your God has provided you with all the tools to best make something of our short life here on earth. These four approaches, those three attributes together, you will see that if you look at the two traditional versions of the landmarks and the two modern versions, that's what they encapsulate. Let's look at the timeless virtues. Divine will. You will find that in Mackey's landmarks 19 and 20 on the requirement of monotheistic faith. Pound's landmarks 1 and 2. Also, UGL's 8, belief in God. CGMMA's first of the three landmarks, monotheistic faith. Conscience, you will find that in Mackey's landmark 21. Pound's landmark 3. The UGLE's landmark 3, the Masonic obligation, where you oblige yourself before your brethren using your volume of sacred law. And landmark 6, the three great lights in the lodge, which are the volume of sacred law, your square, and compasses. You will find that in the CGMMA's second of three landmarks it recognizes as consensus in the 51 jurisdictions, the volume of sacred law. Divine will, monotheistic faith in a monotheistic deity, divine plan, conscience, apply your faith within our philosophy, and tolerance. You see this is new because in our modern setting as regular Freemasons, you will see that the concept of Masonic tolerance is usually principle number 7 and CGMNA's landmark 3. And I'm not I'm not making things up here. This is a board that highlights the Jacob's ladder that highlights these three virtues. But what I really want to highlight is this meeting of a lodge of the United Grand Lodge of England, the 16th January 2020, this year before we had the lockdown, stated meeting of the Gordon Lodge number 3 UGLE. It was highlighted in there. No, I'm not violating any secrets here. It's in their publications. Here you will see among the brethren, there are 4 faiths represented there: Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and Sikh. So, altar that you see there, the master's altar, you will see, if you really look at it closely, 3 volumes of sacred law. The Bible of the Christians, the Quran of the Muslims, and the Gita, which is recognized by the Hindus and the Sikhs. You might want to ask, teka lang, very worshipful Teddy, teka lang, paano napasok ang Hindus dito? Alam ko Hindu, I have a friend. I know from talking to him that they actually have over 33 million Hindu gods. That is polytheism. Brethren, we have to understand. You have to go into, and this has been decided upon, okay? We've had Hindu petitioners. We are now have Hindu Freemasons like this one, okay? The Hinduism brethren, is not a polytheistic faith. It is not a faith with many gods. It is. It does have many gods, but it is actually a branch of monotheism in that what it truly practices is what we call henotheism. I'll repeat that. Henotheism. So if you have a Hindu petitioner, do not disqualify him. Ask him. Ask him what his religion is about, and he will tell you this. Henotheism is the worship of one God. Again, I'll hear that. The worship of one God without denying the existence of others. Okay? It is the worship of one God without denying the existence of others. It's a branch of monotheism, and there Hindus and relatedly Sikhs, therefore, they can join. They can join. They and become regular freeds. Last point, brethren. What about our governance norms? If you remember Masonic Maquis 25, we went through this together. Diba? They are basically highlighted by our traditional versions of landmarks. Experiential learning, the 3-degree model, okay? Maquis 25, that's landmarks 1, 2, 3, and 24. In pound, that is 4 and 6, relating to Masonic philosophy. That is principle number 8, the jurisdiction of the UGLE over the 3 craft degrees. Brotherly love, okay? The application of our philosophy by learning through mentorship of one male to another. Maquis 18, 22, 9, 10, 14, and 15. Landmark 7 of pound, the traditional qualifications of Mason, that you have to be male, freeborn, and mature. Diba? UGLE's principle 8, principle 4, and principle 1, regularity of origin, male membership. Diba? Agape, love for the humanity, relief, the concept of Masonic trust, large governance, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, and 17, large governance, that a master is sovereign within his lodge, number 16, landmark 16, and landmark 25. This cannot be changed. UGLE's 8, preference against innovation, because this is what our system represents. Then, of course, contemplation through reason, creativity, and reflection. The concept of Masonic privacy, that's Maquis 11 and 23, and Pound's landmark 5. So what am I saying in a nutshell? Brethren, if you know the landmarks, whether they're Maquis 25, the comprehensive version, Pound 7, the essentialist version, or the modern versions of these in the UGLE's principles of Grand Lodge recognition, or that service, they essentially boil down to these 3 virtues: divine will, conscience, and tolerance, and these 3 approaches to philosophical life: experiential learning, brotherly love, relief, and truth. Wow, this is our longest to date, but I hope, especially that many of us here don't really go into the landmarks as much, that this has become something new that you can use as you go forward and become better Masons in our craft. Thank you very much, brethren. Kuya Dennis, back to you. Do you have
Well,
questions?
Teddy, thank you very much for your very eloquent and very proficient way of really delivering our discussions every month. I think the brethren and our guests who are joining us this evening learned a lot again from you. My goodness. Rockstar ka talaga, Kuya Teddy. Kakaiba. Hanep. Okay, I think, Kuya
Happy to
Teddy,
serve.
we just have a few questions. Just check on the Q&A.
Okay.
We only have 2, please.
Okay, let me check the Q&A. Okay. As regards lodge regulations, which is better as to making a certain provision part of the lodge's permanent statute? A lodge resolution, or that resolution being incorporated into the lodge's bylaws? It depends. It depends on the context. If you want to ensure that that it is perpetuated, because eventually the lodge will have a complete turnover. If you want to make sure that it is, like for example, it's a substantial sum, a donation, 5 million, and you put it, and you only use a certain sum. You want to perpetuate that, even though all the members have moved on, you put it in the lodge bylaws. But generally, a lodge resolution will be respected. Of course, the next worshipful master might change it. That's his authority for any lodge resolution. But remember, all worshipful masters, they enter into the office pursuant to the Masonic concept of trust. So, if your worshipful master is not doing that, it reflects on him, not on the lodge. Okay, so because they are stewards of the lodge, they generally will respect lodge resolutions. Okay, so it depends on the context. You want to make sure you make it an extra bylaw. Second, if a brother from another jurisdiction visits our lodge wearing not our prescribed lodge uniform, can the Tyler worshipful master bar him from entering the lodge? I don't know what you mean. Are you saying that he has his own uniform? In the first place, uh, if he's from another jurisdiction, he has to wear his apron. He cannot come in wearing his own apron. The real question here is, if you have a brother who's an affiliate member, let's say like me, I'm also an affiliate member. I'm also affiliate member, District of Columbia and England. Even if I visit a lodge here, okay, and I'm not serving in the Grand Lodge, okay, where I have to wear Grand Lodge uniform, regalia, okay, I cannot use my aprons from another jurisdiction because I'm a Filipino Mason. Okay, so if you were initiated past race in California, you affiliated here in one lodge, you cannot visit another lodge and use your regalia as a California Mason because you already are a Filipino Mason. So in that case, you must wear the regalia of a Filipino Mason. But if you're a brother, you cannot wear the regalia of Filipino Freemasons because you're not. You must wear your regalia. If you forgot to bring it, sorry na lang. Okay, but what we can do at best is to give you a plain white apron because that is universal. And there's nothing wrong, as a matter of fact, if you remember the lecture for the apron, the plain white apron is all you need. Okay, all you need to be recognized and visit lodges abroad. Okay, so thank you for those two questions. Let me highlight that we will be, we're just gonna check for any typos, and we will be issuing this, for your reference. We'll be issuing these handouts sometime later this week, if not tomorrow, on Friday. Uh, Very worshipful Dennis, let me just highlight. We have 4 more. This is our second round. We have 4 more. In January, we'll talk Masonic harmony and mediation skills. If you have lodge na maraming nag-aaway, or you have a lodge na it's getting so hot, you have to bring in somebody like very worshipful Dennis to mediate. Better listen to him if he comes in, right? Yon, let's talk about that. January, lodge management. How do you uh, preserve lodge harmony? Then of course in February, nako, exciting yan, yung February Masonic history. We'll talk about fake news. Okay? Fake news. When does it mask Masonic history? What can you do to address it? I will be highlighting, for example, one famous biographer of Rizal and his fake news in his biography about the Freemasons. You don't want to miss that. Okay? Importantly, we'll talk about that February. March 17, we'll talk about, for those of you who want to do Masonic research, like for example, you're a new DGLL or a new batch of DGLs who are coming in, how do you prepare for a lecture in addition to what's prepared for you? This might be useful. How do you write? How do you become a write? How do you write like very worshipful? Worshipful brother Harold Santiago. Very worshipful Vic Hauchin. I mean, how do you become a Masonic writer? Okay, doesn't have to be a long. It can be you as a DGL preparing your first lecture. You'll find our webinar on Masonic philosophy, March 17, to be very useful. And finally, I'd like to invite especially those who belong to our appendant lodges, our demo days, Job's Daughters, Order of the Eastern Star, Amaranth. You're gonna enjoy Scottish Rite, York Rite. You're gonna enjoy our last I think this is actually the week of the ANCOM itself on April 21 for our last episode on ritual systems of our appendant bodies. So you'll get to know them better. So I hope this was useful to you, and we look forward to seeing you to future episodes of our third Wednesdays in the West. Thank you very much, Kuya Dennis.
Thank you very much, very worshipful.
Back to you.
Thank you very much, very worshipful Teddy. Again, this evening is even made more significant and fruitful because of your well-researched and well-delivered, discussion this evening. We're very thankful for your commitment and your passion for the fraternity. To all the brethren, again, the reminder of our Grand Master. Let's all stay tuned on December 19. Wait for your grand present from the Grand East. My goodness. This is something that we will all be happy about because it will
Exciting
definitely,
yan.
it will definitely anchor us back to the roots of who we are as Freemasons. Okay, so this is something that that will enrich our travels, in Masonry, particularly in our personal enrichment and development. So with that, I think we have to thank the Most Worshipful Grand Master for thinking of this very novel way of sending out a gift this Christmas, this pandemic, to all brethren out there. So again, to everyone, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure. The year will close, but definitely our commitment will not, and our work will not. And we will continue to serving you all until we get to transition to the next team. And for the next 4 webinars, rest assured it will be as exciting and as fruitful as we had this evening. I personally apologize. My signal is really very bad. It is because a tree fell on one of our posts here in the subdivision, and they were trying to fix it up, and there are some loose ends. But nevertheless, I think this has been a very fruitful evening for everyone. So to each and everyone again, we thank you all. To our most worshipful Grand Master, who have been very diligently monitoring and making sure everything is doing well. Like a while ago when I was trying to put in the first poll and it was not coming in, he called me up and said, "Pero worshipful, yung poll, hindi pa mapapasok." Sir, we really salute you, for your dedication and your passion. To AGS Oliver Yabut, very worshipful Oliver, we know that maybe in the next lecture series, you will be the one who will answer the questions in the Q&A with the very worshipful Teddy. Okay, very worshipful Teddy, again, thank you very much. We do hope that these things will not, will not...
Kuya Dennis.
Yes.
If Most Worshipful June is listening, that lesson on Masonic cuisine, I was just joking. Kasi baka mamaya, hindi na ako SGL bukas. That's serious. I was joking, Most Worshipful Sir. Okay. Thank you, Kuya Dennis, and thank you, everyone.
Okay, to each and everyone, we peaked to about 190 a while ago, almost 200, and I think we got about more than 200 Facebook viewers who were monitoring us. And then I think we hit more than that in terms of those who were, passing in and checking on what we're doing and if we're really doing this. And to the Cable Tow team, headed by our Cable Tow Editor-in-Chief, worshipful brother Harold, thank you very much for your support and your team and the rest of the group. So we look forward to seeing you maybe this Saturday, by the way. This Saturday, we'll try to stream the Grand Lodge anniversary, okay, which is a tribute to past Grand Masters and a tribute also to our frontliners, who have served not only the fraternity but the community. And they have sacrificed not just time, effort, and resources, but a few numbers of them their lives. And that will make us proud as Freemasons. So to each and everyone, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. And we will see you again soon. Okay? Thank you. Good night.